I'm so incredibly excited. The Marquis de Lafayette has chosen Enfield on his journey. I can't wait.
This is exciting.
I know. Wait till you see the crowds.
And about the code that they use.
The Sherrod family.
Donc, bonjour tout le monde. Ça me fait plaisir d'être ici, de vous adresser au français, la langue de Lafayette. It's a pleasure to come here and address you in French, the native language of Lafayette. Nous sommes tous ici pour commémorer la visite de Lafayette ici aux États-Unis. We're all here in the city of Enfield to commemorate the visit of Lafayette to the United States. As you may already know, Lafayette was very important in France as well. His story captivated the country there as well as here. And they gave him the name L'Héros de deux mondes, the hero of two worlds, because of his feats here during the Revolution. Donc, sans aucun délai, je vous présente Gilbert du Motier, notre invité, le Marquis de Lafayette. Therefore, without further ado.
Bonjour. Mesdames, Mademoiselles, Messieurs, mes amis. I'm overjoyed to be here with you today. The kind and flattering reception with which I am honored excite the most lively feelings of gratitude. I beg you, Mr. Mayor, to accept my respectful acknowledgments to you and the citizens. Thank you very much.
And whereas his lifelong work was always in support of human dignity for all, and whereas during his farewell tour in America in 1825, he visited the then 24 states, already speaking about the ideals of liberty, justice, and democracy. And whereas on February the 28th, 1825, Lafayette visited the home of his late friend, John Branch of Enfield, who served with him in the American Revolution and was greeted by Joseph Branch and the son of his departed dear friend. And whereas the Cellar, one of the few homesteads still existing today that Lafayette visited and will host Lafayette's 200th anniversary of visiting Enfield, North Carolina. So be it resolved that the town of Enfield hereby commends the Marquis de Lafayette for his dedication to the principles and democracy and equality for all, and proclaim the importance of American citizens everywhere to celebrate the bicentennial of his farewell tour in America in 1824-1825. Finally, be it further resolved that the mayor and the commissioners of Enfield hereby declare February the 28th, 2025 as a time to remember and celebrate Lafayette's farewell tour in Enfield at the historic Cellar Home, 404 Sherrod Heights in Enfield, North Carolina.
Nothing happened. Nothing happened, and you missed the email, by the way. From that, with the Enfield riots and the focus, it became an economic entity. We went from 300 plus people at about 1870 or so, right after the Civil War, and then we jumped to 2,000 people right after 1900, based on agriculture and based on cash.
Here, let's give a big round of applause for everybody on the committee and everybody that was here today. Okay, wonderful job. Now, traditional farewell at the end of any ceremony is Auld Lang Syne. Christopher Benbow and Dennis Doran will do our best. These are the words written to the tune of Auld Lang Syne but they were dedicated to Lafayette 200 years ago. Sure. Hey. The days of triumph be forgot, although those days have fled, and we neglect the sacred spot where patriot heroes bled. On all those days of old lang syne, we never can forget, when with our sires to Brandywine came gallant Lafayette. To meet the foemen on the plain, each patriot onward pressed, and there with Washington and Wayne appeared our honored guests. Then long as our romantic stream shall roll its silver wave, its bells shall echo with the name of Lafayette the Brave. Or are those days of old lang syne we never can forget, when with our sires to Brandywine came gallant Lafayette.
God, that was awesome, right?
How are you? I can't hug anybody too close because they poke you in the head.
So what'd you think of it?
I thought it was really wonderful today, especially all the children. They're so great. They were so listening to everything, riveted by all the speeches, and now they're going to be having interactive exhibits. I can't believe how nice it is. And then all the adults that came, and oh my gosh, General Lafayette on this very spot 200 years ago. Pretty amazing. Even though we don't think about it, we are also part of history, because 200 years from today, people will look back and say, who were the people at this event today? Who were they? And so we'll be famous too.
That's amazing. So we got school kids over here. What's going to be the program for the kids going over here?
We have 10 interactive programs with 10 speakers, and there'll be everything from cipher, which is a great thing, because now remember, we didn't have cell phones or communication 200 years ago. So Karen Vaughn is going to lead everybody in how to do a puzzle or a cipher to make secret codes. And the secret codes were passed along to people and nobody could read them. So the children will learn that. They're going to learn about the William R. Davie person who was the founder of the University of North Carolina. They'll learn about him. They'll learn about, from Sandra Bryant, she's going to talk about her great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, an African-American Revolutionary War patriot. So she'll talk about that whole history and how to do lineage. Oh my gosh, we have Colonel Branch is reenacting the Colonel, who's the dad of this house. And then we have the Governor, John Branch, which would have been his other son, John Jr., and he's here telling stories. But the big highlight is the horse and buggy, because chosen children that were really good in school this year are going to get to ride on the horse and buggy around in a circle. And I think they'll love that.
Larry? How was the event today?
They get everywhere we want them to be, and they see everything they need to see.
Yeah.
If that works. But I already think if you look in these rooms around here, this is what it's about.
Yeah. 200 years ago, you walk right through this door, right on the spots, right?
Right through this door.
It's amazing that these kids get to celebrate this historic event.
We want them to know that history happens here, not just somewhere else.
Yes, absolutely. What was it like planning and talking about the town today? You did a masterful job at telling the history of Enfield. Where did you get all this knowledge from?
That's what I enjoy doing.
That's
I like to know why it's named Sherrod Heights. Why is that Whitfield? Why is it the Cellar? And I still don't know. And I have looked. My brother-in-law says that old Mr. Sherrod used to go out the back door and disappear for a while and come back with a cook. Now, we think there may have been something out there somewhere, but who knows? Who knows?
So you born and raised here. I got to interview your lovely wife about Sir Archie and, of course, Austin Curtis and her passion about that. The two of you are just passionate people, but you are dedicated people, too. And I saw an article the other day that Brenda Green did on you, and she did an excellent job, the Lenny Andover case. How does this educational piece tie to that case?
What we're trying to do is educate these kids. Now, they need education on math and science, but they also need to know about where they came from. Yeah, this was a plantation. It was probably worked by enslaved people, but it's their history too. It's their history too. And then we have people like Austin Curtis. He was an enslaved person. There are many paths to freedom. His was different. His was different. He said, I'm going to be the best I can be, what I do, and it worked for him.
Regardless. And he ended up being a free person, right?
Not only a free person, he owned his own plantation before it was over with. Hundreds of acres of land.
And what about General Lafayette visiting today? Halifax and Enfield were two of those major stops that he had.
He spent the night at Falls of the Tar. There was no Rocky Mountain. But I think he stopped here simply because of what the people in this family in this area had meant. That's why he stopped here. He didn't have to stop here. He made a choice.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Sure.
And he wanted to be a military officer. If your country is not at war and you want to be he was 19 years old, he wanted to have a career in the military. But there was no war going. So they deactivated all the military units in France, put them on reserve status, 2-star Major General. And guess how old he was?
14?
19. Can you imagine becoming a 2-star? Yeah. He was at Yorktown, he was one of their generals. And George Washington asked him he had 450 soldiers under his command. And there was a depot of supplies for the American Army in Richmond. And he sent Lafayette to keep the British from taking that, which he was successful. And he was one of the major reasons we won the War of Yorktown.
Where is Yorktown?
Straight north on these towns. It's in Virginia. You know where the Williamsburg?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's just across the peninsula from Williamsburg on the road to York Riverside.
Yeah.
And that was okay, good.
We have some refreshments for you.
Yes.
And thank you for coming.
Yeah, we appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Chelsea and Myra.
What's it been like traveling throughout the United States again?
Unbelievable, wonderful tour. Chance to come back to the United States and see all the friends that are still with us today that we've met along the way, and the sons and even grandsons of some of the others that I fought with during the American Revolution. And to see the progress. We fought a war for independence, and it's working out for us, and the towns and cities all along the way are improving. And the life of the individuals here is based on a new constitution and individual rights.
your beautiful daughter-in-law and also the baker.
Yeah.
So what do we got?
Took me 2 weeks. So 2 weeks to bacon. So it was about 20 batches of cookie dough. And then it took me probably about 5 days to flood all of them with the icing. And then only about a day.
And all this is done by hand?
Except for the printing. I have a edible cookie printer.
Oh my God.
He's my best employee.
And is that Jimmy or is that
And participating in all of our fun, making history with Enfield. As much fun as everyone is having here today, it was that much fun planning it.
I'm a history buff. I just love history, and I love history that matters. And to recognize the importance that Enfield has played in history, the entire community. Because we're talking about a time when everybody was struggling the same way. You know, there wasn't no my, me. It was about we're going to do this together, or we don't get it done.
And also, General Lafayette was a big advocate for the freedom of slaves
and human rights, all together. He gave up his title in France to challenge the social issues that was going on here and in France. And so by him coming here and doing it here, and he saw how willing the people were to engage in it, because they realized we're not fighting a war overseas. This is for our own survival. And so the fact that it just lets you know ordinary people in history play big roles, and most of them we'll never know. It's always the people we'll never know. But every now and then we get an opportunity to tell somebody's story, and we recognize it's how we got here.
Those kids, they got to be, and you know, they're part of history today. 200 years ago, how do you think they're going to remember this day when they look back on it?
Don't short them 50 years though.
It actually helps them establish where they came from, their genesis. So often we don't recognize who we are outside of our family. Events like this let you know that you're part of the culture, you're part of the time, you're part of history.
We call this a Fowler because it was designed for hunting, but it's smooth on the inside. It's got a smooth barrel. It doesn't have rifling in it. And so this gun can fire solid ball like this, musket ball like this, or they can also fire pellets or buckshot. And sometimes they use a combination of a buck and ball. these guns, they're designed for hunting. And so they're basically a 20 gauge shotgun. But members of the militia, and I'm portraying a colonel in the militia, I'm portraying Lieutenant Colonel John Branch, who was a colonel during the American Revolution here in Halifax. And all men between 16 and 60 were supposed to turn out for militia musters. There were some caveats on that. Some religions didn't have to go to the militia musters. They could pay an extra tax in compensation to the colony and then later the state. But when you went to these musters, you were supposed to bring your own firearm with you, and you were supposed to bring the equipment you needed to use the firearm. So a shot bag to carry your bullets, and a powder horn for your black powder. You're supposed to have a pick and whisk for taking care of your firearm, and also some sort of edged weapon. So in this case, I have a sword. They usually give you a choice between a sword or a tomahawk. A tomahawk is like a hatchet or an axe. Regular soldiers, the Continental Army, also the British Army, had guns that were designed for military use. And those guns usually could take a bayonet, which was a knife that hooked onto the muzzle of the gun and turned the gun into a big spear.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
But even today, most hunting guns don't take bayonets. They're not made for war, they're for hunting and sporting. And so, just like today, most hunting guns aren't designed for that. And so, this gun is originally designed for hunting. But it's very typical of the kind of guns that a member of the militia would carry with them. The way it works, it uses a flint lock. So there's a piece of flint that's held in a vise on the lock of the gun. And you load it by taking a small amount of black powder out of this powder horn, and then you pour more powder down the muzzle of the gun. So I have a measure here so I can pour, I don't have to think about it, I just pour the powder in this measure, pour that down. I would take my bullet, put that down the muzzle, and then usually some paper or cloth called wadding, and that kind of holds everything in. And I use this ramrod to push it all down the barrel, down to the bottom of the barrel, which is called the breech. I return the rammer, and that's basically how you load the gun. When you're ready to fire it, you pull back this cock, and you pull the trigger. This comes down and it strikes this piece of steel. Does anyone know what happens when flint strikes steel? What happens? It makes a spark. And so that spark will fall onto the black powder that I put in the pan here. And that black powder is very flammable. And there's a small hole here that goes between the pan and the breech. And that'll ignite more powder in the breech of the gun. It's gonna follow the path of least resistance, which is just down the muzzle of the gun. So you're looking at about, these guns are accurate up to about 50 yards. So that's hitting a target that you're aiming at. But they can be deadly much further than that, up to about 200 yards. It takes about 20 seconds to load this gun. So 3 shots in a minute are what most soldiers are training to do during the American Revolution time period. There are some battles that happen that Halifax militia is part of. We send soldiers to the Battle of Guildford Courthouse. And we also, in 1781, the British Army under Cornwallis marched through Halifax. And some of our militia fights against the British Army here in Halifax itself. The British Army actually take over Halifax for about 10 days, the town of Halifax, before marching north to join other British forces in Virginia. So folks, I work at historic Halifax State Historic Site just up the road. Every April, we do a big event that commemorates the Halifax Resolves. And if you look at our state flag, you'll see the date April 12th, 1776 on it. It commemorates the Halifax Resolves, which is the first official action of any of the original 13 colonies voting for independence from Great Britain. So I encourage you all to come to Halifax on April 12th because we have a big event going on that day. We'll be doing musket firing demonstrations and artillery firing demonstrations. We'll also have other activities taking place to learn more about what life was like 200 years ago. Thank you.
Lafayette.
Oh,
and I was using the Revolutionary Friends book that they had given to the county, to the kids at all the schools. And so I already talked to some school kids about that. We've had a good talk, and I've been telling just all about the Lafayette and why it was so important that he came over here. Yeah, it's been really fun.
Were they interested? And did they learn a lot? What do you
I actually
think?
had kids ask me questions, and I used to ask them. And they had been waiting in the yard for all of this to happen, and they still listened when they came over to me. So, yeah, it was great. We've had.
So, what does this day mean to you? And tell me about what it means to you to be here today.
Well, because I'm from Enfield, and my family actually lived in this house, the Sherrod family, and so people getting this thing together, and they wanted to include me in on it, and I was so glad that they did.
Yeah.
It means a lot because I've got relatives here today, and we're going to get together for a meal later at my house, and it's just been a great day. And I like being here because my dad's cousin, he's about 96, 97, he's here. And so we're glad that we're hoping he'll be able to come again, but he was the last person in our family to own the house.
Oh my God.
So it just means a lot to be here because I grew up running around in this yard. My dad lived here for a short period of time with all his cousins, and yeah, so it just feels good. So I'm just glad. And I know Dennis real well, and he's been just very hospitable about letting me come.
Oh my God.
I learned about different people and how it worked and how it went. And about the code that they use.
And until they could find a way to get away. And trails. We have 3 designated sites here in Halifax County, as designated by the National Park Service as part of the Network to Freedom that enslaved people.
They just where people let them stay?
No. These people would use these trails and hide out in the woods and, try with someone that could give them a way that they could have a quarter of a mile walking trail in Halifax at the historic site. You can go to the back of the historic site and it walks down to the water, right down to the Roanoke River. That's the first site. We have a second site in Wells, which is the Roanoke River, because so many use that river for transportation. And the third site in the county is in Roanoke Rapids, at the Roanoke Rapids Canal Museum. Yes, and they work on the bateaus taking products up the river, and they again would talk to other people and have other ways to find out how they could get away. So those 3 sites right here in Halifax County, which are more sites in any county in the state of North Carolina right now. The other thing is we have just secured a lease on some property in Weldon to build a Halifax Underground Railroad Museum. We are going to be doing multiple different types of fundraising activities and holding different events to share with people so that we can make this come to fruition.
Be interesting. I hope I can.
Hope you will too. It's become almost an obsession with me.
Lady and with this picture right here. Who's that?
That is actually my grandmother, who was the baby, and her.
Oh my God!
Yes, and this is my grandmother's father.
Oh my God!
The stand group.
Right.
His name is Charlie Walden.
Oh my God!
And this is his father, Barry Walden.
Oh, okay.
So Barry was my great-great-grandfather.
Okay.
But now, Barry's great-great-grandfather, my 5th great-grandfather, who was B. Walden. Barry was a free black man that served 3 tours in the American Revolutionary War. That is research that I have just found out the past couple of years. Wow. Rory passed away. He was paying taxes on a $200 73-acre farm in Northampton County.
Legacy. Yeah, lit up for me.
And this book of African American patriots in the American Revolution. And my 5th great grandfather, Drury, is listed in this book.
Oh my goodness.
Of the 3 tours, he volunteered twice to serve. And one time he went because someone else did not want to go. He got paid.
Wow, amazing.
When I started doing the research to verify, I was so overwhelmed, but I made a visit to the National Archives in Washington, D.C. It helped me verify his service. And they did. I was able to take pictures, touch and take pictures of documents that he had signed.
Oh my goodness.
And that was her when she was a baby.
I got it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
This was my dad. Okay. And that's my mom and me with my daughter and my granddaughter.
Oh.
And this is the latest family.
Mm-hmm.
My son recently married about a year and a half ago.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God. Well, thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
Halifax. And after he leaves there at that point, he stops at the Grove. Lloyd Jones has been dead 45 years. This same house that Cornwall's occupied Halifax. He comes in and he sees the aged Mr. Jones, falls back in a chair, being overcome with emotion. That's what it said in the newspaper. I said, something strange going on here. People told me he was just an emotional type fellow, this, that, and other, you know. He knew Lloyd Jones. Lloyd Jones had been dead 25 years. I found a smoking gun. I found a letter from Major John Baptiste Ashe, written from Halifax on July 11, 1777. It said to Governor Richard Caswell, Governor, the returns on the troops I sent you last week are accurate, and nothing else has happened here in Halifax except one of the blue bloods from France by the name of Marquis de Lafayette has passed his way on the way to the Grand Army. And he has a letter from Mr. Franklin. Oh, so let's unravel this thing. Lafayette comes to America. He lands in Charleston. He gets a couple of old horses, not many horses he had. They play out and they get some more, and they're coming in small groups so not to get attention. If you come to Halifax, you're a blue blood from France, you're going to stay at the Grove. I say that 48 years later, he came back in there and saw Ms. Jones, and he came overcome promotion. That's how he knew there were 2 big boats in Halifax, because he crossed the boats already. So at 19 years of age, he is already in Halifax, and he would come through Enfield as well before he ever sees George Washington. He's here. So I have said that some of the first hospitality shown to Marquis de Lafayette in America was shown to him in Halifax. Now, how can I even stretch that out? Well, I think he spent the night at the Grove, but about 2 days after he left Halifax, he took the occasion to write a letter to his wife, Adrian. And in that letter, he says, you just would not believe the hospitality that's been shown to me by all these people in America. And he had just left Halifax. So I think some of the first hospitality shown in Lafayette was right here. And certainly, you know, he claimed that he was here before he ever saw George Washington. But actually, when he got to Continental Congress, they gave him the cold shoulder. They had all these French officers coming in that wanted commissions, and the local people couldn't even get a commission. And then about the second day, somebody started pulling the hem of the man's coat. Said, you don't know who this man is. This guy is well connected. He is wealthy, and we need the French on our side. So Lafayette told us, listen, I want to fight for liberty. I don't want any pay. I don't want a pension. Just let me fight for liberty. And he and George Washington bonded. And matter of fact, when he comes here 200 years later, he's not by himself. His son's with him, George Washington Lafayette.
Interesting.
Oh, really? Yep.
That's fascinating. And we were at Colonel Williamsburg, and the children got to see how Lafayette had sent him the key.
Oh yeah, the key to the Bastille was there in
yeah, we got to see the
Mount Vernon.
Yep, at Mount Vernon, we got to see the real key on the wall.
That's the key he sent him. Everybody knows that Fayetteville is the first town named in honor of Marquis Lafayette.
I didn't realize that till today.
Okay, I got 2 stories about that. One story is there's a French artist traveling through America after the war. And he comes up to Fayetteville and says, what's this? He says, name for Marquis Lafayette. So he sketches the market house and Fayetteville. He gets back to France. He presents that to Lafayette. He says, I know you'll never see this place, but there's a place in North Carolina named for you in your honor. So Lafayette takes that sketch of Fayetteville and hangs it on his bedroom wall. And Lafayette says when he gets to Fayetteville, he turns down the street and there it is, just like it was drawn on his wall. That's pretty neat. That was a wet, muddy day there, too. But so I asked this trivia question, and you all were not in a position to know that anyway. I haven't seen anybody that could answer it. You got Fayetteville named. Is there any other town in North Carolina that has any association with Lafayette? There is. LaGrange. One of his estates in France was Lagrange, so-and-so. And LaGrange is named for Lafayette. So it's, it's lots and lots of history in here that just stirs over, with the British courthouse set right across over in the cemetery, the jail, the silversmith, blacksmith. It was a thriving little village. As Larry spoke this morning, Colonel Bradford's land started here and went back that way towards Fish Creek, owned over 1,000 acres. I have proven now that he's here by 1747. The house I restored in Halifax, it's possible, is going to be the nucleus of his first house. Still not quite dated with dendrochronology, but the dendrochronologist from Baltimore, who, by the way, has done Mount Vernon, Monticello, the Tower of London, Westminster Abbey. He's from England. I asked him, I said, the reason you can't date that, because he's dated this house. I said, it's older than anything else you dated. He said, yep, that's right. So before the Revolutionary War, Colonel Bradford's going to build another house on the hillside in the cemetery on the top side. So where Governor Branch is buried is his grandfather's family cemetery. It's Colonel John Bradford. Eventually, it becomes associated with the Cellar House because part of Cellar Plantation, because his granddad owned all the land.
Oh my gosh.
So and then there are tons of stories, Larry. I mean, after Joseph Branch dies, Governor Branch takes in his children, educates Lawrence O'Brien Branch, who we know eventually be Confederate General L.B. Branch, who's killed at the Battle of Sharpsburg. He's going to lead the Confederate troops at Newbern. He's going to be instrumental in other battles. Showed his worth. He had turned down the Secretary of Treasury in Buchanan. He had been a lawyer and a newspaper editor in Tallahassee. He was the president of the Raleigh and Gaston Railroad, man of great promise, cut down during the war. But this house, while it was still in the Branch hands, you have Joseph Branch, who's going to go to West North Carolina because that's where his daddy had 10,000 acres that the government gave, North Carolina gave him for his service, which is the West North Carolina, which today's Tennessee. That's where he went to Tennessee for. He dies out there. Governor Branch is back and forth in politics. Their sister, Patience Branch, who has been named after her mother, Patience Bradford Branch, Colonel Bradford's daughter. She's going to live here. And it seems like she might have got married late and having children. She marries Reverend Daniel Southall from Murfreesboro, very wealthy family. They're living here when the person I'm portraying, Governor Branch, his daughter marries General Daniel Smith Donaldson in Washington City. Yeah. And 2 days before the wedding, the Reverend Daniel Southall dies in Washington. He's buried there in one of the churches. They're right at his house.
I'm wondering if that was Dad's hat because we were the exact same gloves and the exact same hat.
Come on up.
Yeah. So question for you. You found a document of a tax revenue, the tax collector. Is this it?
Signed by George Washington Thomas Jefferson,
right there.
Right there.
When it's,
Colonel John Whitaker from Enfield was appointed to collect the first internal revenue tax in United States history. It was a tax that Alexander Hamilton, the Secretary of Treasury, came up to try to pay for some of the debt. And of course, the first internal revenue tax is going to be the amount of whiskey you have, the size of your steel. Now, you imagine a man from Enfield rides up to your plantation, your farm, and says, I'm here to collect taxes. You said, well, man, what are you talking about? We just lost the British on taxes. Who told you to collect this tax? And he'd take a paper out and show us this. George Washington said I could. There's the paper he pulled out of his pocket, signed in 1792, issued from Philadelphia when it was still the nation's capital. signed by George Washington as president and Thomas Jefferson because he's Secretary of State. That's Enfield history right there. I've asked other students, you do homework, why don't you do homework now? Eventually gets thrown in the trash can, whatever. Can you imagine any homework from 200 years ago surviving? Here we go. Young girl did this 10 months before Lafayette got here at Braff's Academy, a mile back this way. Real wheels. She has a Bible verse, she's writing. I'll point this out because you all are a little older. J was not an accepted letter of alphabet, and it started to be worked in, so she skips J. She's not making a mistake, but have an uppercase J. But then in writings back then, F's, S's were being made to look like F's. So it's very confusing trying to read some stuff. That's 1824. The man I'm portraying, Governor Branch, lived over here. He needs somebody to teach his kids. One day, his wife rides up on a carriage someplace here in Enfield, and his little kids out there playing. Whose kid's that? That's Maria Robinson's. She meets her, finds out she has a tremendous education. She is from England, thick British accent. She said, wow, would you come and be my governess? And Maria Robinson, everybody's got a story, right? Maria Robinson had met Captain James Robinson of England, fell in love. She was expecting a baby. The War of 1812 starts. He skedaddles, comes out, and the graphic story printed in books is that they go into Baltimore Harbor. She told her son up over her head that he's going out on the first privateer ship he's on. He sees his son for the first, only last time, because he gets killed in battle first battle he's in. She's here in the United States. She's an English kid, has no money, but she knows she has two sisters in a place called Enfield. She comes here and winds up being the governor of North Carolina. And there, right down the street over here, in 1816, Ms. Branch's niece, and this report does this. She says over here she's 9 years old, and it has Enfield, 1816. All over 200 years old, survival. So it's the point of something.
We're talking about Austin Curtis. Austin Curtis was just as famous in the 1770s as Michael Jordan was today. So, and then of course there's Sir Archie.
Now, what's special about Sir Archie?
Sir Archie is basically was the foundation sire of the thoroughbred breed. Every famous thoroughbred that races today has Sir Archie blood. And he was born in Virginia, but he lived much of his life in Halifax and Jackson. Yes. Mm-hmm. And the neat story is when Cornwallis came through Halifax on the way to Yorktown, he stayed on the farm where Austin Curtis was the horse manager. And instead of letting Cornwallis take all of the horses with him, Austin Curtis hid them. He hid the horses in the woods around the farm, and Cornwallis' people didn't find them, so they weren't stolen, which I think is pretty neat.
Now, I understand that horse racing was one of the America's first sports.
He was a jockey. He was, he was a horseman. All around. He knew the horses. He could not only ride them. You know, he advised Wally Jones who to breed to. You know, he was just a very trusted confidant. They were a team. Wally Jones had a proclamation in the legislature, and so he was granted his freedom. He owned 300 acres when he died, and his obituary was in the Raleigh newspaper.
That's amazing. Now, Sir Archie, what type of horse is Sir Archie?
Thoroughbred.
It's a thoroughbred. And thoroughbreds are like generally.
It's a breed.
It's a breed.
I guess.
Do they race them at 1 year old, 2 years old, 3 years old? How do they race them?
They raced at 2 years old, and now they race at 2 years old.
2 years old.
But the Belmont Stakes, the Kentucky Derby, and the Preakness, those races, they're 3-year-olds.
Now I understand that you were heavily involved in horses and
no, who told you that? I grew up with horses. Always had horses. Always rode. But now I work for a company that manages horse shows, and so I get to travel to Florida and Virginia and quite a few shows in North Carolina, putting on horse shows, which I really enjoy.
What's your favorite part?
My favorite
part about
horses
doing it
is the people. It's getting to know. It's getting to know the people, and it's a camaraderie that you don't find anywhere else. You can be with a big group of people, and I almost always gravitate to somebody that shares my passion for horses.
Dr. Cunningham, can I ask you a few questions?
You may.
Sir?
You may.
I mean, this is a fantastic day.
Absolutely fantastic.
How was it for you, and how was it for the kids, and how did you plan all of this?
We had almost over 300 kids out here this very day. K-12.
Yeah.
Across the entire district. And our kids behaved so well.
They did.
But that talked about a lot of pre-planning. See, we've been working on this for quite some time. So we introduced Lafayette in the classroom. So they were familiar with him early on. And they understood Halifax Resolve, the 250th anniversary, leading up to today. In fact, Larry, some of our junior reporters will be sitting down with Lafayette and interviewing him today and talking about it. But historically, being an old Birmingham boy, to be sitting out here at this time, 250 years later, surrounded by all of our ancestors as free Americans on the anniversary, just makes me feel so American. This is why we're a great country, because how we evolved. So we planned, and now we are celebrating.
Right.
And I thank the committee for allowing Halifax County Schools to be part of it.
Oh my goodness. And you have a famous saying, the 5.
Get your 5 fingers up when you see Doc C. Now, what we talk about is strive for 5. We believe all of our children should have a 5-star life. And in America, you can do that. But you have to go get it. That's why we put that action verb in front of it, strive. So all of our kids know that if they want that 5-star, they got to go get it. It's not going to be given to them. And that's what we strive to do every single day.
Now you need help to get your heart